Barely used outboard motors are flooding the market at prices nobody imagined 3 years ago. Engines with under 100 hours sit on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for thousands below original retail. Dealers who once had 6-month waiting lists now struggle with packed warehouses. The outboard market has transformed from frenzy to financial disaster in record time. What triggered this collapse, and what does it reveal about an industry that expanded too fast? In 2020 and 2021, outboard sales reached unprecedented levels. U.S. boat dealers reported over 300,000 new powerboat sales in 2020, followed by approximately 300,000 in 2021, according to NMMA data. Nearly every boat needed an outboard. Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda ran factories at maximum capacity, adding shifts and extending operations to meet orders that kept accelerating. Dealer inventories collapsed to crisis levels. Outboards that normally sat on showroom floors for 60 to 90 days sold within hours of arrival. Supply chain constraints affecting aluminum castings, electronic control modules, and semiconductor chips stretched lead times from a typical 4 to 6 weeks to 6 months or longer. Buyers placed deposits on engines they had never seen, desperate to secure allocation before inventories vanished completely. 3-year-old used outboards with 500 hours appreciated in value, selling for 85 to 95% of original purchase prices. The sense of scarcity was everywhere. Marine forums exploded with posts about tracking down engines. Buyers called dealerships 3 states away, hoping to find a Yamaha 150 or a Mercury 200. At boat shows, manufacturers displayed engines with sold signs before events even opened. Industry veterans compared the frenzy to nothing they had witnessed in 40 years. First-time buyers accounted for 34% of boat sales in 2021, with 420,000 entering the market that year alone. This represented nearly double the historical average of 22%. These were not traditional boating families. Young professionals working remotely, families seeking pandemic escapes, and recent graduates pooled savings for boats they had seen on YouTube fishing channels. Every boat needed an outboard, creating demand manufacturers could not satisfy. Florida saw new vessel registrations jump 38% between 2020 and 2022. South Carolina climbed 42%. Texas increased 51%. Social media fishing influencers gained millions of followers, driving beginners toward boat ownership faster than traditional pathways. Average household income for new boat buyers dropped from $132,000 to $94,000 as younger, less established buyers entered. Down payment percentages declined from the typical 25% to as low as 10%. Promotional programs offered zero-down financing on boats and outboards together. Loan-to-value ratios climbed above 95%, creating severe vulnerability to market depreciation. Outboard manufacturers interpreted pandemic demand as permanent rather than a temporary surge. Mercury, Yamaha, and Suzuki invested heavily in production capacity based on projections of sustained growth through 2028. Mercury approved a major expansion of high-output assembly lines at their Fond du Lac, Wisconsin headquarters. Yamaha reinforced large outboard production with advanced robotics and extended shift rotations. Suzuki committed to increased output for top-end models. Hiring surged across manufacturing and technical roles. Third shift schedules were introduced at key plants, pushing equipment and personnel to limits. Component suppliers doubled workforces within 18 months to meet demand for aluminum castings, stainless steel hardware, and electronic components. Raw material costs complicated expansion as marine-grade aluminum prices jumped 73%, and electronic components faced semiconductor shortages. Despite rising input costs, manufacturers maintained pricing discipline, fearing market share loss to competitors. The cooling began in late 2022. Dealership foot traffic declined 23% in the fourth quarter compared to the prior year. Spring 2023, traditionally the strongest selling season for outboards, failed to materialize. Boat sales dropped 31% year over year across southeastern states. Inflation reached 40-year highs at 8% in 2022. Gasoline peaked above $5 per gallon in June 2022, making boating significantly more expensive. Marine loan rates rose from below 5% to between 8.5 and 11.9% by mid-2023. Monthly payments on a $70,000 boat with 20% down increased from $612 to $947. The return to office mandates reversed remote work trends. Boats sat unused in driveways and storage facilities. Boats for sale listings on Boat Trader increased 79% between January 2023 and January 2024. Every boat listed for sale came with an outboard, flooding the used engine market. By 2024, outboard sales declined 7.6% to approximately 278,000 units, according to NMMA data. Brunswick Corporation, Mercury Marine's parent company, reported revenues dropping from $6.4 billion in 2023 to $5.24 billion in 2024, a loss of $1.16 billion. Earnings collapsed 69% to $130.1 million. The 18% revenue decline hit Mercury facilities in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, St. Cloud, Florida, and Juarez, Mexico simultaneously. Mercury Marine laid off 300 employees in June 2024, citing demand drops. 1 month later, Mercury notified 1,700 hourly workers of temporary layoffs totaling 6 to 8 weeks through year-end. More than half the hourly workforce at Wisconsin headquarters faced job losses or reduced hours. Over 2,000 workers with decades of manufacturing expertise departed permanently or faced ongoing uncertainty. Brunswick CEO David Folks told investors the company was undertaking cost control as boat builders slowed production, creating trickle-down effects on outboard demand. High interest rates and reduced consumer spending forced manufacturers to right-size production after years of expansion based on unsustainable projections. Outboard values followed boat depreciation curves downward. A Mercury 250 horsepower Verado, retailing for $22,000 in 2021, saw used market values drop to $16,000 by early 2024 and $13,000 by late 2025. Models from 2020 and 2021 experienced 40 to 50% depreciation within 4 years, compared to historical norms of 30 to 35%. Buyers financing 90 to 100% found themselves deeply underwater. A typical scenario involved purchasing a Yamaha 150 horsepower at $15,000 in 2021 with 10% down. After 3 years of payments, the loan balance stood at $11,000, while private party value fell to $7,000, creating $4,000 in negative equity. Online marketplaces became dumping grounds for desperate sellers. Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist listings for outboards increased by more than 200% in Florida alone between 2023 and 2025. Engines with under 100 hours appeared daily at prices 15 to 30% below comparable listings from weeks earlier. Sellers reduced prices weekly, hoping to escape ongoing storage costs and insurance premiums. Marine forums filled with stories of owners unable to sell outboards at any reasonable price. A Mercury 115 horsepower with 70 hours, listed at $8,000, received offers of $5,000. A Yamaha 90 horsepower with 40 hours sat unsold for 3 months, despite dropping from $7,000 to $5,000. The market was saturated. Wholesale marine auctions in Jacksonville, Tampa, and Charleston saw outboard consignments triple. Auction prices averaged 50 to 65% of comparable retail values. Some lots failed to meet reserve prices entirely, as dealers stopped bidding once they realized purchased engines would sit alongside existing inventory gathering dust. Outboard dealers faced unprecedented challenges. Many had ordered aggressively in 2022 and early 2023, pressured by manufacturer allocation programs. Floor plan financing, once manageable at 5% interest, climbed to 9.7% by December 2023. Monthly carrying costs on a $15,000 outboard jumped from $62 to $121. For dealers holding 30 outboards, monthly interest alone exceeded $3,600 before insurance, storage, and overhead. Curtailment requirements forced dealers to pay down principal on unsold units after 90 to 180 days. Without sales revenue, dealers borrowed against personal assets or took second mortgages to meet mandatory payments and avoid inventory repossession. Some dealerships closed entirely, unable to sustain carrying costs on inventory nobody wanted. The median age of U.S. boat owners reached 60 years old by year-end 2024, with more owners in their 70s than in their 40s, according to InfoLink Technologies. The younger buyers who drove pandemic demand either left boating entirely or purchased used equipment at drastically reduced prices. New outboard sales face years of suppressed demand as used inventory works through the market. Mercury's recovery in third quarter 2025 showed revenue increases, but it came without the 2,000 workers who were eliminated in 2024. The company gained market share by capturing sales from competitors, not from overall market growth. High horsepower engines above 300 horsepower remained relatively strong, generating $1.2 billion and representing 35% of total outboard market value, despite unit declines. The outboard market collapse demonstrates how quickly manufacturer optimism transforms into financial disaster when temporary surges are mistaken for permanent trends. Production expansion based on unsustainable pandemic demand created excess capacity that forced massive layoffs and dealer inventory crises. Buyers who financed at peak prices face years of negative equity. The wreckage scattered across marine marketplaces tells a clear story about the cost of misreading market signals and expanding too aggressively into temporary booms that inevitably become permanent busts.